Hey everyone, once again we're picking up with reading the Communist Manifesto. This is directly from the manifesto, this version, and it's actually the communist Marxist version. And in last video, part 1, that I covered pages 30 to 31 and page 9 and 11. We're picking up now at page 11. Students, just make sure just at the bottom of the page in your reading packet is where we're picking up. Owing to the extensive use of machinery and to the division of labor, the work of the proletarians has lost all individual character and consequently all charm for the workmen. So he's talking about the distancing, the contradiction, right? The worker doesn't appropriate anything from their work. So their work is distanced from themselves. They really have no purpose in working in the factories. He becomes an appendage of the machine, and it is only the most simple, most monotonous, and most easily acquired knack that is required of him. Hence, the cost of production of a workman is restricted almost entirely to the means of subsistence that he requires for maintenance and for the propagation of his race. But the price of a commodity and therefore also of labor is equal to its cost of production. In proportion, therefore, as the repulsiveness of the work increases, the wage decreases. Nay, more in proportion as the use of machinery and division of labor increases, in the same proportion of the burden of toil also increases, whether by prolongation of the working hour, by the increase of the work exacted in the given time, or by increased speed of machinery, etc. Page 16. No sooner is the exploitation of the laborer by the manufacturer so far at an end that he receives his wages in cash than he is set upon by the other portions of the bourgeoisie, the landlord, the shopkeeper, the pawnbroker, etc. So in other words, as soon as so it's bad enough that the worker's just an appendage of the machine in the factory, but as soon as he's done working, he leaves and he enters into just bourgeois society at large, and then becomes a victim or the oppressed of the landlord, the shopkeeper, the pawnbroker, etc. The lower page 17, the lower strata of the middle class, the small tradespeople, shopkeeper, and required tradesmen, generally the handicraftsmen and peasants, all these sink gradually into the proletariat, partly because their diminutive capital does not suffice for the scale in which the modern industry is carried on. So think mom and pop shops in our society today. They would not be considered part of the bourgeois. Even though they might own some things, they're really part of the proletariat. Does not suffice for the scale in which modern industry is carried on, and is swamped in the competition with the large capitalists, partly because their specialized skill is rendered worthless by new methods of production. Thus, the proletariat is recruited from all classes of the population. Now we're going to jump back to the very beginning, to the preamble, page 8 of the Communist Manifesto. A specter is haunting Europe. The specter of communism. All the powers of old Europe have entered into a holy alliance to exorcise this specter. Pope, Tsar, Metternich and Guizot, French radicals, and German police spies. So he's reflecting now on introducing, watch out bourgeois, a specter is haunting Europe. The specter of communism. Where is the party in opposition that has not been decried as communistic by its opponents in power? Where is the opposition that has not hurled back the branding reproach of communism against the more advanced opposition party, as well as against its reactionary adversaries? Two things result from this fact. 1. Communism is already acknowledged by all European powers to be itself a power. So it is already an established power. 2. It is high time that communists should openly, in the face of the whole world, publish their views, their aims, their tendencies, and meet this nursery tale of the specter of communism with a manifesto of the party itself. To this end, communists of various nationalities have assembled in London and sketched the following manifesto to be published into English, French, German, Italian, Flemish, and Danish languages. Now, on to page 21, page 29, page 21. Hitherto, every form of society has been based, as we have already seen, on the antagonism of oppressing and oppressed classes. But in order to oppress a class, certain conditions must be assured to it under which it can at least continue its slavish existence. The serf in the period of serfdom raised himself to membership in the commune, just as the petty bourgeois, under the yoke of the feudal absolutism, managed to develop into a bourgeois. The modern laborer, on the contrary, instead of rising with the process of industry, sinks deeper and deeper below the conditions of existence of his own classes. He becomes a pauper, and pauperism develops more rapidly than population and wealth. And here it becomes evident that the bourgeoisie is unfit any longer to be the ruling class in society. Because of the sinking of the proletariat, the bourgeois is no longer fit to be ruling class and to impose its conditions of existence upon society as an overriding law. It is unfit to rule because it is incompetent to assure an existence to its slave within his slavery, because it cannot help letting him sink into such a state that it has to feed him instead of being fed by him. Society can no longer live under this bourgeoisie. In other words, its existence is no longer compatible with society. So this is the justification for getting rid of the bourgeoisie, which is, we're going to see next, page 22, how is this accomplished? In what relation to the communists do the communists stand to the proletarian as a whole? And remember, we have the problem here of where's the leadership class going to come from? Can the common blue-collar worker accomplish this on his own? No. The true communist is actually the true leadership class of the proletariat. The communists do not form a separate party opposed to other working class parties. So, okay, look, it's not separate, but what's its role? They have no interests separate and apart from those of the proletariat as a whole. So, okay, it's not separate party, it's not separate interests. They do not set up any sectarian principles of their own by which to shape and mold the proletarian revolution. So he's overtly saying there is no distinction, but hold on. They are distinguished. The communists are distinguished from the other working class parties by this only. In the national struggles of the proletarians of the different countries, they point out and bring to the front the common interests of the entire proletariat, independently of all nationalities. So they are the universal leadership class that rises up to lead the proletariat. 2. In the various stages of development which the struggle of the working class against the bourgeois has to pass through, they always and everywhere represent the interests of the movement as a whole. So this is a ruling class, and they actually do stand apart from the rest of the workers, and they actually do end up having their own interests, hopefully for the whole, but have their own interests, quote, for the whole. The communists, therefore, are on the one hand practically the most advanced and resolute section of the working class parties of every country. They're the most advanced and they're the most resolute. They are distinguished, folks. That section which pushes forward all others. On the other hand, theoretically, so that was practically, theoretically, they have over the great mass of the proletariat the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions, the ultimate general results of the proletarian revolution or the proletarian movement. So they have an advantage. The communists, notice the communists. So the proletariat isn't even a communist. The communist is the leading class of the proletariat. Conclusion. In short, the communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. In all these movements, they bring to the front, as the leading question in each, the proper question. They know the proper question, no matter what its degree of development at the time. They're the leaders. They're the ruling class. Finally, they labor everywhere for the union and agreement of the democratic parties of all countries. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at a communist revolution. Later on, you'll see Lenin's way of making people tremble, Stalin's way of making people tremble. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. Actually, they're going to have their lives to lose as well in the Soviet experiment and absolutely in the Chinese experiment. They have, back to the manifesto, the proletarians have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. Notice just once again, working men of all countries unite. These are militant words. This is a militant document. This is a revolutionary document. This is not a peaceful Gandhian revolution. This is not just a Wall Street sit-in. This is not an MLK nonviolent resistance. This is a violent resistance, overthrow, and it's universal everywhere. So those are some majorly important parts of the Communist Manifesto, and it's important to wrestle with those parts and what it means even for the proletarians, right? What it means for the bourgeois, what it means for somebody who's not even a Marxist, right? This is the central line of thought for the Marxists, for the communists, for the proletarian, for the communism in general. Any other comments? Follow or go ahead and watch through some of my intro to Marxism videos, and of course we'll be getting we'll be wrapping up these other topics. But in general, this is just a total approach to understanding the ideology of Marxism, scientific socialism. Really could just call it socialism in general, but we can be more precise by calling it scientific socialism, historical dialectical materialism, communism, Lenin, the ideology of Marx and Lenin, and we'll see a brand of it in Maoism later on.